Welcome to Coffee with Cable, your weekly cup of motivation. I'm your host, Troy Cable. Let's begin with the story, of course. My mother-in-law got severely sick in late December of last year, and it lasted 10 to 14 days. She had the worst cough that would just not go away. It woke up the whole house. It was something she never had before. She went to the doctor, and the best conclusion they could come up with was an upper respiratory infection. She lived through that and now is back to normal, without making World War III out of it. Now quit letting the media control you out of fear. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and let me show you the facts and encourage you to have strength and hope in these hard times. First, looking at the 1918 flu pandemic, also known as the Spanish flu, that started in January 1918 and ended in December 1920. With 500 million cases around the world, an estimate of 17 to 50 million deaths. Let those numbers sink in for a moment. Those numbers far exceed the current COVID-19 numbers. As of April 7th, 2020, with the current number of deaths at 74,702. And on the bright side, 278,700 that have recovered from the illness. COVID-19 will eventually peak and life will begin to go back to normal, just like we did 100 years ago. We've come a long ways and have learned a thing or two since then, and are still the strongest country in the world. As Americans, we survived one of the worst pandemics in history, and we'll get through this pandemic just as well. Now, in these hard times, you have to keep things into perspective and, of course, positive. Do you realize that most people that are infected by COVID-19 have recovered? There are 13 times more recovery cases than there are deaths. Keep in mind, the easiest way to avoid contamination is frequent hand washing with soap and water, which should be no-brainer for everyday hygiene. Let's put life a little more into perspective. Think about your parents, grandparents, or your great-grandparents, and the times they lived through, and they survived. Many of them living through the Great Depression. Now, stories from the Great Depression are filled with incidences that illustrate one act of kindness after another. In spite of incredible hardships, people could still find ways to encourage others with words of blessing or unexpected help. For many, there was no electricity or refrigerators, so they just cooked only what could be eaten at that meal. Then, when banks closed, people were left with literally only the cash in their pockets or hidden away at home. Everything else was gone. Many discovered strength through optimism and looked at their disadvantages as personal challenges that could be overcome with ingenuity and hard work. As a nation, we went on to ultimately live productive lives with an inner strength gained from having lived through one of the hardest and difficult times. Just like then, we'll come out of this with strength and lessons to be learned. At this time of hardship, we also need to focus on the positive. Hey, like being able to spend more time with your family, having a home-cooked meal around the dinner table, throwing the ball around in the backyard. And now, also, you have the time to learn something new, like take up gardening or woodcraft. And the big overall picture, and my personal opinion, we're more so in a pandemic of fear than the actual virus. Don't misunderstand me, the danger is very real, but having fear of the situation is a choice and is far more dangerous than any virus. We need to encourage one another. Courage doesn't mean we don't get afraid. Courage means you don't let fear stop you. Keep in mind, fear is only temporary. As I wrap up today, I want to leave you with these words of encouragement, coming from Matthew 6:25 through 30. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink, or about your body, what you'll wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in the barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? You, ye of little faith. Thank you for watching Coffee with Cable. Stay in there, stay encouraged, and I'll see you next week.